You really are oblivious, aren't you? The inheritance, the inheritance. Hurry up and hand it over already. As soon as she opened the front door, my sister-in-law, Amy, barged in, cheerfully blabbering at her own pace. We were never close, so her sudden concern bewildered me. If it weren't for Tom's inheritance, I wouldn't come near such a gloomy place. Indeed, for her, dressed from head to toe in glittering clothes and accessories, the contrastingly gloomy house of her brother Tom and his wife, me, must have seemed dreary. However, I found Amy, who didn't even bother to pay her respects at her brother's altar and brought up the inheritance right at the entrance, to be far more insidious. Her attitude wasn't new. She was arrogant about her appearance and used to bully her meek husband. After he started doing well and earning a considerable income, her attitude changed, and she became clingy, or so my husband had told me. I was disgusted by her cold-heartedness, not visiting her brother during his repeated hospital stays and not shedding a single tear at his funeral. I had decided to cut ties with her, but her greed for money wouldn't allow it. Come on, I don't have all day. You must be busy too, right, Gabby? Amy, eyes sparkling unbecomingly for her age, was convinced she would receive the inheritance. But I had something that would shatter her belief entirely, the last words from my late husband. Read this, and you'll understand everything. I am Gabby, widowed in my mid-60s, leading a modest life without unnecessary luxuries. About a month ago, I lost my beloved husband to a long-standing illness. We met and married in our 40s, so we had no children. Having supported each other for 20 years, the loss was immense. I wondered if there was any point in continuing to cook for someone when there were no children. The thought of following my husband in death crossed my mind, but I lacked the courage. Moreover, my husband often told me, "No matter what happens to me, live on without faltering. You are a strong, independent woman." I couldn't ignore my husband's words, which now served as his will. After his death, my life changed drastically. I was busy with funeral arrangements right after his passing, which, in a way, saved me from dwelling too much on my grief. Thanks to my sister and many others who supported me, I managed to get through the tumultuous month. Although my memory of that time is vague, my sister told me later, "You did an admirable job as the chief mourner. Tom must be resting easy in heaven." The funeral saw far more attendees than I had anticipated. My husband had been a high-ranking executive at a nationally renowned company, so many unknown faces were expected. Colleagues praised my husband's character, and some had even flown in from overseas branches, sharing stories of their outings. Although I couldn't spend much time with each visitor, I made sure to send proper thanks later, meticulously recording names and addresses for return gifts. With the support of my sister and her husband, I can finally breathe a sigh of relief. Thinking back on my husband's gentle nature fills me with immense gratitude. While I'm proud to have been surrounded by such wonderful people, Amy's presence casts a shadow over these memories. Despite being significantly younger, Amy stood out in our neighborhood for her youthful appearance and high beauty standards. She enjoyed her beauty, which in itself wasn't a problem. Even though she is 58 years old and not young by any means, I sometimes think I shouldn't be wearing miniskirts and showing off my bare legs anymore. But I don't really care what others think about that. The problem is that she always finds a way to insult me. I'm not as pretty as she is, and I don't have the same enthusiasm for yoga or going to the spa. Gabby, you always look so dowdy. Don't you feel embarrassed coming from the countryside? Tom is wealthy, why didn't he marry someone more beautiful? Whenever we meet, she immediately starts with her insults and scrutinizes what I'm wearing as if appraising it. Wearing a bag from an unknown brand at your age, what's that about? And those shoes, how long have you been wearing them? You had those last time we met, didn't you? It's easy for me to tell when someone is sloppy because even if their clothes are decent, their accessories reveal their lack of taste. Doesn't Tom buy you anything? He doesn't care about material things, so if you asked, he would buy them, wouldn't he? I have enough bags and shoes, but not as many as Amy does. It might be considered sloppy, but I'm naturally not inclined to buy a lot. In fact, I make it a point to throw away at least one old item whenever I purchase something new, so my home tends to be quite minimalist. For our anniversary or my birthday, when my husband asked what I wanted, I always opted for planning a trip. Objects can be bought anytime, but memories are priceless and irreplaceable, in my opinion. Now that my husband is gone, I'm glad I made those choices. Even indirectly hinting at such sentiments when Amy insults me, she would just snort in derision. Tom wasn't exactly handsome, so in that sense, you're a good match, aren't you? But the fact that you married such a man must mean you were after his money, right? No matter what insult she throws at me, she always ends with this. This is the issue I have with Amy's behavior. She has convinced herself and tells our relatives that I married my husband for his money. There were indeed many women who tried to get close to him for that purpose. My husband didn't gamble or go out at night, his only hobby was fishing, so I was surprised by how much he had saved when we got married. But I never thought of splurging his money. At the time, I had been working at the same company for 20 years since I graduated and had a decent amount of savings myself, not as much as him, but substantial. Our shared value of not spending much was one of the reasons we got married, contrary to what Amy claims. I've explained this to Amy several times and asked her to correct the misunderstanding among our relatives, but she never listens to me. She seems to have unilaterally decided that our personalities do not match and constantly finds reasons to clash with me. Amy has always been competitive, and my husband tried to avoid her as much as possible when he was alive. Perhaps that's why she hardly helped with the funeral arrangements. Though I was the chief mourner, she never once offered words of encouragement or sympathy when my husband began to fall ill or was decided to be hospitalized, despite my repeated calls. At one point, she even got angry and said, "Don't contact me for every little thing." So, I decided it was best not to inform her about anything related to my husband's health. However, I didn't want to worry my husband, so I would tell him that his sister was concerned about him, even though it was a kind lie. In the end, she never showed up in front of my husband until his passing, and even at the wake, she acted as if she was there reluctantly. Yet, the relatives around her would say, "She's been so upset since hearing about her brother's illness that she's lost her appetite and cried every day to the point of no tears left. That's why she looks so down." She said she couldn't visit the hospital because she didn't want to see Tom in a weakened state. When I heard this, I felt an indescribable frustration combined with the shock of losing my husband, and tears welled up. Amy, portrayed as a tragic heroine, did not look like someone who had lost her appetite. There were no tear streaks or swollen eyes. Despite telling me not to contact her, she seemed meek in front of the relatives. If my sister hadn't skillfully taken me away from that situation, I might have lost my composure and shouted at the relatives. Realizing Amy is self-centered and incapable of showing respect even to the deceased, I decided to minimize contact with her as much as possible. I've been sorting through my husband's belongings little by little while managing work and household tasks, and at the same time, trying to mend my heart. At first, every time I disposed of one of my husband's items, it felt like a memory was being erased, but I reassured myself that the memories with my husband are etched in my heart more than anything. While cherishing the moments with those who come to pay respects at the altar, I've been trying to return to my peaceful life. Then, as expected, it was Amy who shattered those days. She pressed the doorbell and rattled the front door. "Gabby, I know you're there. Open up, your sister has come all this way." Though I've never considered this person my sister, Amy raises her voice as if to announce her presence to the neighbors. The lights are on inside, and now, pretending not to be home is not an option. "What have you been doing?" You made me wait so long I almost got sunburned. As soon as I unlock the door, before I can say anything, Amy barges in. She shoves a shopping bag from a famous international brand into my hands and starts taking off her coat. What's this all of a sudden? Struggling to find the words, I finally speak up, only to be met with an exaggerated sigh from her. You know, I've been so busy, I couldn't visit. I thought you might be feeling down all by yourself, so I brought you something nice. Saying that, she snatches back the bag she handed me and, standing right there, pulls out its contents. Accessories, perfume, and luxury baked goods, none of which seem fitting for me at this moment. Does she really think I'll be overjoyed to receive these? And today, Amy is unnaturally kind. I know I've been harsh to you in the past, but you were the wife chosen by my only brother. I didn't want his inheritance to go to some greedy woman. But seeing you at the funeral, I realized you were different. Only someone who truly loved Tom could cry like that and give a speech with disheveled hair, ignoring what others might think. Even when trying to flatter me, she can't help but comment on my appearance and actions. Yet, her gaze towards me is filled with what seems like respect and passion. Confused by Amy's sudden change in attitude, I still stand there, at a loss for words, while she continues to shower me with praises. Feeling increasingly suffocated by the presence of someone whose true thoughts are unknown to me, I gently say, I'm sorry. I haven't settled Tom's belongings yet. It's not a good time to have guests over, but maybe you could at least say hi to Tom? Her eyes narrow, and she returns to her usual cold gaze, shouting, You really are clueless. Did you think I came here just to see your dreary faces? I'm here for the inheritance. Isn't that obvious to anyone? Excuse me? Confused by Amy's money gesture, I'm at a loss. How long do you think I've been waiting? I know roughly how much Tom earned, so I have a pretty good idea of how much I should get from his estate. You can't just swindle me out of it. Hurry up and give it to me. If you're planning to deceive me, I'll call a lawyer and the police, you know? There's no deception. Everything regarding the estate is being handled by a lawyer. Don't play dumb. Half of that inheritance is mine. It's supposed to be split between you and me, right? As she shouts with her face turning red, I tilt my head in confusion. The lawyer had explained that normally, siblings of the deceased are entitled to a quarter of the estate, divided further if there are more siblings. Since Tom had only one sister, she would normally receive a quarter. Tom had always lamented over this, given that from a young age Amy mocked his looks and, along with parents who favored her for her beauty, bullied him. To prove them wrong, Tom excelled in his studies, worked his way through National University with scholarships and part-time jobs, and climbed the corporate ladder in a major company. He had led a challenging life until then. Unsurprisingly, the thought of her receiving any part of his inheritance troubled him. I had encouraged him to decide for himself, and only after his passing did I learn his decision. Now, completely changing her tune, Amy rants. For a wife to take almost all the inheritance, you must be as greedy for money as they come. I always thought it suspicious for someone to marry such a plain man past 40. There's only one reason to spend your life with someone whose only attribute is his wealth. Listening to you talk about love and shared values was just a bunch of nonsense. Hand over half of what you got, and I'll disappear. Her sweet words and gifts were all a ploy to extract my husband's wealth. Having always been antagonistic towards me, I had suspected there might be ulterior motives. Yelling in the entrance where my husband's altar stands, she showcases a profound lack of morality. I wonder what my husband, listening quietly from heaven, might think. I tell Amy to wait and decide to show her a document. Hearing that, Amy's eyes lit up instantly, spouting nonsensical things like, Gabby, you really do understand. Let's go have some fancy French cuisine with that money next time. I didn't respond to her pace and brought out the document from the back room to hand it to her. "Please, this is from Tom. You can have it." What I handed her was Tom's last letter, his will. Realizing what it was, she quickly unfolded the paper and scanned through it. Her eyebrows moved up and down, clearly showing her agitation as she absorbed the content. "What does this mean?" I didn't know anything about this. Her ignorance was her own fault for never making an effort to see Tom. Words were on the tip of my tongue, but they likely wouldn't reach her, already deflated and slumped from the shock. The will stated that Tom was leaving all his assets to me as a final gesture of gratitude for the peaceful and fulfilling life we shared, supporting each other physically and emotionally. It contained such passionate words that I was embarrassed to read aloud. Reading it, I was moved to tears again, knowing that Tom thought of me even while battling his illness, ensuring not a single penny would go to his sister. The answer was clear, but Amy, unable to accept reality, stared into the void, muttering, "What does this mean?" After turning pale, Amy was unresponsive to anything I could say, so I somewhat forcefully escorted her out and locked the door. Through the door's glass, I saw her shadow sway and stagger away. Feeling secure that there would be no further trouble after reading the will, my peace was short-lived as Amy called the next day. "I never thought Gabby could be so wicked. You deceived me." Her fury was palpable even over the phone, sending shivers down my spine. But I had done nothing wrong and certainly didn't deserve to be slandered. Before I could retort, she cut me off. "Thinking you've got the upper hand now? Well, too bad, because you're about to experience real pain. You've angered me, and I won't forgive you even if you beg." Though I barely grasped her reference to inheritance, her implications about my suffering and begging were utterly lost on me. My silence, mistaken for fear, only fueled her to laugh louder. "See? It's too late for apologies. I'd love to see your face now, but I'm busy meeting with my lawyer." Her triumphant tone puzzled me further. Why she felt the need to consult a lawyer or inform me about it was beyond understanding. Instead of bothering me, she could continue her usual routines of yoga or spa treatments. "I can't believe you don't see the situation. Talking to you just frustrates me, it's bad for my beauty. I'm not satisfied with the estate division and am preparing to sue. Whatever covert talks you and your husband had, a wife monopolizing the inheritance is absurd and against the law. You think showing me Tom's will would silence me? Misusing your sick husband for personal gain shows you lack a conscience. I have every right to my share of the inheritance, and I will claim it." Believing I had manipulated Tom into writing the will, she was determined to fight. But I couldn't stay silent any longer. "Your efforts will be in vain." That will was directly handed to the lawyer by Tom himself. I read it afterwards, and there was no trickery. Plus, you have no claim to the inheritance, according to the lawyer. So, it might be best if you didn't waste your time. Her anger only intensified at my calm explanation. "How dare you act so smug? This calmness is temporary. I'm serious. I've been calling repeatedly, and finally secured a meeting with the lawyer. They understand my determination and are on my side, capable of extracting compensation from you." With a villainous parting line, she hung up. Her reasoning for calling, assuming I'd be rattled by the mention of a lawyer, was unfathomable. Her relentless pursuit, despite receiving nothing from her brother, felt almost admirable in its tenacity. Months passed without incident, and I managed to sort through Tom's study, filled with belongings. Gradually packing up, I left the house filled with our memories, moving on from the place we once called home. Hoping to fulfill my late husband's wish of living in a quiet suburban house upon retirement, I sold our old home and land. With that money as a down payment, I moved to an area where my sister and her husband live. Although it was regrettable that we couldn't make this move while my husband was still alive, our dog Maya, who had been with us for over 10 years, seemed delighted with the new house. To prevent her from straining her legs on the slippery flooring, I even bought a light-colored carpet. Selling the house meant fewer possessions, but the prospect of gradually making our new space comfortable gave me something to look forward to. Still, the strange sensation of my husband's absence persisted, amplified by the sparse furnishings. With little to do when Maya was asleep, I often found myself lost in thought, though I knew dwelling on sadness wasn't beneficial. One day, my smartphone's loud ring cut through my daze, waking me from a half-sleep during a TV drama. Without checking the caller, I answered. "So, you're determined to bring me down, you plague." The caller was Amy. Her abrupt yelling instantly dispelled any remaining drowsiness, though her reasons remained unclear. She continued without waiting for my response. "It's your fault I'm getting a divorce. Because there's no inheritance coming." What? Though her accusation was absurd, I had a guess at her meaning. She likely told her husband that she would receive a portion of my husband's estate, and their relationship soured when that fell through. The fragility of their marriage, breaking down over financial issues, was not my burden to bear. "Won't you even apologize?" "Your fault I can't live anymore." "What am I supposed to do all alone?" "Why don't you work? You're still young in your 50s. She fell silent at my calm reply, whether due to irritation at being told to work or at being reminded of her age. Either way, it was high time she faced reality. If you were living on your husband's salary, you shouldn't need an inheritance. Why the divorce? He was after Tom's wealth from the start. If your brother's inheritance isn't coming, you're useless. All you have is your looks and the money you were supposed to bring. Decades together, wasted. I want my time back." That's what he said. He was furious. Why do I have to take the blame? He's a pathetic man with a low salary. I want my time back too. I had met Amy's husband during our marriage introduction and saw him annually at New Year gatherings. Like Amy, he preferred flashy brand name clothes, accessories, and sports cars, leaving an impression of frivolity. Her mention of his low salary suggested they had long been pressuring my husband for money, likely spending their income recklessly. Given their extravagant tastes, it was clear they lived beyond their means, relying on others' wealth. Marrying Amy, who was known for her spendthrift and selfish behavior, was his own doing. I even went to a lawyer, but was turned away. They said I had no inheritance coming. Everyone's against me. But I blame you the most. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. Despite my advice, she sought legal counsel, only to face embarrassment. Gabby, you brainwashed my husband, didn't you? He said he should have married someone like you. Why does your name come up in his complaints? Were you seducing him behind my back? How did you come to that conclusion? I don't even have your husband's contact info. Lies. My husband has never praised a dowdy woman like you before. You must have seduced him and had an affair. Confess, and I might forgive you if you give me the inheritance. What? This conversation is pointless. Confronted with baseless accusations and irrational demands, I was left speechless by her delusion and refusal to face reality. Exasperated by Amy's baseless accusations, I gave up on the conversation and hung up the phone. The house we had lived in was already being demolished, and the land had found a buyer, so there was nothing left for anyone to confront me about. Naturally, I hadn't shared my new address, so the likelihood of us meeting again was almost non-existent. assistant. Just to be safe, I immediately set up a call block, deciding to seek peace of mind once more. Half a year passed, and Maya, our family dog, and I had settled nicely into our new life. My sister and her husband and I would dine out once or twice a month, enjoying fulfilling days together. Occasionally, at my sister's suggestion, we would dine in the room where my husband's altar was placed, which I believe made him happy too. Thanks to regular checkups, my recent health screening showed no issues, and the area had plenty of convenient stores, leaving me with little to worry about in my daily life. The only slightly troubling incident in the past few months was a call from the municipal office. Amy, having divorced and with no savings, thus penniless, had applied for social welfare. However, she was informed that if she had relatives who could support her, she wouldn't qualify for assistance. It seemed that all the relatives who once adored and supported her unanimously declared they couldn't provide any assistance, likely knowing her history of extravagance all too well. As a result, she became isolated from her family. Eventually, the municipal office contacted me through their representative, but naturally, I had no intention of taking her in. Had she and my husband been close during his lifetime, perhaps I would have considered it. But given that she and her former husband had approached me solely for money and didn't behave respectfully even at the funeral, I felt no obligation to help her now. Despite her accusations of me being greedy for money, it was she who had drowned in her desires. I wish she would reflect on her life and make amends. As for what became of her, I haven't kept up. Rumors suggest she caused trouble at the first job she found and quickly resigned, or that her neighbors noticed her ex-husband's absence, deducing a divorce and subsequent move. Whether these stories were true or not, no one seemed to know her whereabouts or how she was managing, and frankly, I lost interest over time. Having regained peace of mind, I cherished my moments with Maya even more. Maya, always a calm dog much like my husband, became quieter with age, which worried me. My sister, a dog lover, seemed to grow fond of Maya and one day announced she had adopted a puppy. Excited, I visited my sister's house and was greeted by a tiny chihuahua. Maya's eyes sparkled at the sight of the puppy, happily watching as the little one bounced around. Hoping this new friend would bring joy to Maya, I watched them play, feeling a warm sense of contentment.